Well, good morning, Liberal Kansas, Southwest Kansas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, and all other places where you tune in to get your news and views from the middle of America. This Earl with the Leader in Times on, well, I got the date right, but the day wrong. It's Friday, December 15th. So don't watch that. I'll be fixing that while we get the intro going here. Join with me as always, well not always, wasn't here yesterday, Jim Rice on the far side, just off camera, B. Simons, and special guest Larry White joining us here this morning. And as I'm fixing that, maybe Rice, you drove in, saw a little white stuff on the street. Tell people what street conditions out there.
You know, I mean, they're wet, and it's still snowing and a little bit of water falling out there. So, you know, I thought it'd be gone by now, but it's, you know, I don't know how much we've had in the last couple of days, but it's been a fantastic amount of moisture and really come nice. We couldn't order it out of the Sears catalog any better than that.
Well, if this, from what I've seen on the reports, this is the tail end of it today, and then the weekend is supposed to clear up. It's supposed to be sunny throughout the weekend. We'll get to that on the Squeaky Clean Car Wash weather report later on. But as you're getting up this morning, the streets do not have snow on them, not the ones that I saw. The streets are clear, yeah. But where there's grass left, or
your windshield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll see some snow there. So just be prepared for that as you get up and getting around this morning to get out. You might have to clean the windshield off, but the streets, I think, are navigable. No issues there. What you ride in from the northwest side, B, was like for you?
It was just wet. There was really nothing falling from, that I saw, but it definitely was wet. The windshield cleaned right off, so it wasn't freezing, which is always a good thing in the morning.
Always.
So yeah, it wasn't a bad ride in.
You also did a drive down to Texas yesterday. What was the road conditions as you head south out of Liberal on 54?
That was a little different story. I ran in the snow at Guyman and had snow all the way to Dumas and back, and a little bit of slush. Not really icy, but I saw about 5 cars off the road, so some people got a little crazy. And there was one point where I was passing. You're only one lane because it was just 2 inches of slush in the left lane, so you had to be really careful on trying to pass them. Because I got one guy that was driving like 20 miles an hour. I'm like, why are you on the road? You got to be off the road. So I got around him in the slush, but from then on it was pretty clear. But it snowed the whole time I was gone. So once I got to Guyman.
Well, the airplane didn't show up last night. Well, it showed up.
Just didn't land.
At the airport, but they turned around and went back. Took everybody back to Denver, so they got a free ride, I guess, down and back, experimental run. But I heard it, and they tried to land, and then they decided not and went back up and said, well, we're going back to Denver because the ceiling is too low to land. And so
what do they do when that happens? Do they just leave them there overnight?
When Brian, my son, when he called last night, he said that they'd give him, I think, meal tickets and I don't know, something else, but he said there was somebody on the plane and that, I don't know, he kind of knew or something anyway, and they were, is that working?
Double check it. You look a little softer than normal.
All right. Anyway. But anyway, he said that they, he was going to go to somebody's house and stay last night. Somebody on the plane knew somebody in Denver, and so they were going to go stay. So apparently the airlines didn't put them up. But they talked about, and one of the ladies, when we were out there, one of the ladies said, well, they're going to try to maybe land in Garden or Dodge, but I think the same cloud ceiling was over Garden and Dodge as it was here, and I was surprised. I thought it'd be cleared off out here this morning, but it's still spitting a little rain and a little bit of snowflakes falling. So
I don't know what good that would do anybody anyway. If you get dropped off, an hour and a half or something from where you're supposed to be.
Well, that's what I thought. I told Carolyn, I said, well, we just want to go fill the car up because if I land in Garden, we'll have to go get him. So, but we didn't. So they just went directly back to Denver.
Which takes me back to one of my favorite holiday shows. If you didn't see it, is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But
if you got a lot of time, fly.
Well, that plane didn't land where it was supposed to either. But it was a great show. So be prepared for traffic out there, especially if you're heading down south. But we'll get to you the Squeaky Clean Car Wash weather report a little bit later in the show and take a look at what's going on, so you can see what to look forward to. We'll be But we're 10 days out now, 10 days out from Christmas, so I'm sure people are going to be looking at that. We've got a report coming out in the Leader and Times. You'll find it at liberalfirst.com here probably later today or this weekend about the traffic that's expected out at the airport. It's expected to increase. They know, I guess they know the ticket sales and stuff like that, so they're expecting a little heavier traffic coming through here for the holidays and people flying in. What a nice option it is to have, locally that people can fly in.
I know my wife is flying in this afternoon, so I'm hoping there's at least a little wind to blow some of that stuff out of here.
And like I say, we'll get to the report. I think that we're just supposed to get a little still this morning, but I think it's supposed to clear off. And I know by tomorrow, things are going to be looking a lot better. We don't want to miss a report here locally that on December 11th, Liberal Police executed a search warrant in the 700 block of East Spruce, and they located 2 pounds of fentanyl, fentanyl test strips, ledgers, scales, and baggies.
That's enough to kill everybody in town.
Well, it was enough it's enough to kill 500,000. It's enough to kill 500,000 people. And it was found right here in Liberal, Kansas. And so you want to be careful about, first of all, don't be taking any medications that you don't know where it comes from. Don't be taking anything if it looks like candy or pills or something like that. I would shy away from it. I mean, this isn't a time to play roulette with, some drug or some medication or anything that you're not totally sure. If you didn't get it yourself at the pharmacy, I would not be playing with it right now. I mean, we know we've seen this stuff across the country, and we know families that have had, kids who just experimented and they die. I mean, there's no coming back from. I mean, fentanyl is fatal, and it doesn't take much of it.
No do-overs.
And I know that there is some kind of drug that you can take. It's a counteractive drug.
Narcan.
And I don't know where you would get it. I mean, I don't know where that's available or if it's available in Liberal. If anyone does know or if you guys sell it, let us know. Comment here on the show so people would know. But it's definitely not something to mess around with. But we know over the years, Liberal has been a place where drugs are trafficked through here. Jim, I know you used to be a county commissioner, and you guys, through the sheriff's department, did what you could to fight that. What do you think about, fentanyl being found here?
Well, that's pretty scary. It's not surprising, but it is pretty scary, especially that amount of it. But, that's all caused by open borders. I mean, that's how it gets here. And until we get somebody that is willing to shut that border down, and I do mean shut it down, that's going to continue. But, it's all about the money, and they don't care who they kill. I don't think it's just about making money. And but yeah, it was it was a constant fight back, and it always has been, for years. When I remember when we first got on there, it was amazing that the work that the sheriff's department did, and I'm sure the police department was, the same way. But congratulations to those guys for picking up on that and finding that before. We killed half a Liberal or whatever they were intending to do with it. I don't know. I'd be interested in who had it and where they came from.
Well, and I think that as we get more information on this, but I believe that this was discovered in the investigation of a mysterious death. So I think there is at least one casualty, and that's what opened the door to find out, well, where did this person, what they have, where did they get it, and that's what led them to find this and get it. But they didn't just find fentanyl. They also found meth, cocaine, xylazine, and the manufacture of counterfeit prescription drugs that are packaged to look like the original drug.
You don't pick up that kind of stuff at your corner loco weed store, or from your local marijuana dealer. You don't pick up stuff like that. That requires a apparatus, a network, in order to get that stuff into a little place like Liberal, Kansas.
But we know that China is a major manufacturer of this, deadly drug, and it is flowing over the border, and we don't seem to care. I don't know if you saw this, this is state news, we've been aware of new law in Kansas that is supposed to help stop trafficking, human trafficking. Well, there have been these meetings going around the state, and one of them was recently in Dodge City. Well, there was an undercover police officer from Dodge City that went to that meeting to see what was going on. And their report was, you know, they're basically rallying up and going to create dissension between the people and the police, especially migrants, trying to say that this is targeting migrants and that it's going to lead to arresting illegal immigrants and things like that. And so they turned in their report, and the Dodge City police forwarded that to Kobach, so he knew, you know, that these meetings aren't just informative, but that, and I guess this officer also, or somebody challenged this group that's going around the state, asking them, you know, are you campaigning for Laura Kelly, or what are you guys doing here? Because, you know, I think she vetoed that, but it was overridden. But the law is designed to protect really illegal immigrants who are being trafficked, being sent into sex slavery, children, and other crimes happening, that this will allow them to be able to prevent those kind of things where the major victims are illegal immigrants, and yet they're trying to rile up the illegal immigrants and people like that and their supporters to say, you know, this law is actually targeting them. And we've seen some of that discussion even happening locally, but what's your thoughts on an undercover cop goes to the Dodge City meeting and says, we ought to be concerned about what's going on at these. They're not just informative meetings. They're actually trying to, you know, get people to turn against law enforcement.
I'll say good for him. You know, I need to give him a reward or an award or something, you know, but, yeah, I mean, what is legal about being illegal? You know, I mean, the first thing you do if you want to come to America, the first thing you want to do, and the first thing a lot of those folks want to do is become an American citizen. But, you know, do these 11 or 12,000 a day? That's right, 11 or 12,000 a day are coming across the border. Why are they coming? Are they coming to be American citizens and abide by our laws and our rules and our regulations, or are they coming for some other purpose? And we don't know. I mean, we're going to find out one of these days, just kind of like this thing you was talking about with 2 pounds of fentanyl. That's as illegal as about anything you could do. And that's right here in Liberal. Yeah. My goodness, I mean, we've got some serious problems caused by these open borders. Yeah. And it's not only the people coming across, but it's what they're bringing.
Yeah. I know a lot of times they'll try and compare it to Ellis Island. But Ellis Island was 180 degrees different from what we have today. Yeah. Ellis Island, you had to be able to speak English. You had to be able to take care of yourself, not be a ward of the state. You were checked for whether you were bringing in different diseases or not, whether you, you know, there was just a complete check. And there was another main thing, is that you had to be willing to become a part of the American fabric. You had to be, you had to become an American and accept our way of living and not drag your old country into America with you. These were people that were willing to assimilate, and that was part of the process, was assimilation. What we have now is rightly called an invasion. They don't speak the language. They are not and don't want to assimilate to the culture, and they become a drag, an instant drag on the country when they come in. I mean, cell phones, hotel rooms, food vouchers, free travel, displacing Americans out of their neighborhoods, putting veterans out of hotels and different things like this. I mean, this is just completely out of whack. And as hard as anybody could try, like Mom would say, you can't find a lick of sense in it. I don't know how big a lick is, but it ain't much.
Well, before we jump to the national issues, and trying to keep this on the local level first, but I do want to say that here's the biggest problem with the comparison to Ellis Island. I can go to the records today, and I can tell you the name, the date, the age, the nationality of every single person who came through Ellis Island. Everybody was registered. Everybody was kept track of. Everybody's name to this day. You want to find out who came through Ellis Island? You can. We can't find out who's coming through our southern border.
For the last 50 years almost.
Millions coming through in the under this president alone. And we don't know a thing about them. We don't know where they came from. We don't know what their intent is. We do know on just a handful that we do catch that they're from all over the world. They're not just people coming from Mexico. They're not just people coming from Honduras or any of the South American nations. They're from China. They're from Ukraine. They're from Russia. They're from Korea,
Iran,
all over the
Saudi
Middle
Arabia,
East. You know, it's just an open door. As long as you can find your way through down there to the border, you'll cross the border. So just want to mention that. I do want to share this with that fentanyl situation, though. This is what the undercover officer said in his report. He said, "I believe this is a direct assault on the police and public unity and partnership, one that only serves to advance the insinuation and protection of the human traffickers and smugglers exploiting the very community these advocacy groups claim to advocate for the protection of." And so, you know, this is what the officer went and saw, and this is what he shared. So Carlo Rivas D'Amico is one of the guys leading these meetings across the state. And so what he says, the problem is, once this was discovered what they're really talking about, he said that by not making themselves known, because this guy was undercover, it just underscores why these public discussions are so important. In other words, they're saying, see, they're spying on you, they're looking out, they're trying to find out anything they can about you. What they're trying to find out was that the reason they said they sent the officer in plain clothes was if he was dressed up, that would create an intimidation factor. They wouldn't have an open discussion. They, you know, they wouldn't be able to, you know, they'd feel like, hey, you know, we're not going to talk about what we normally talk about. So they wanted it to be like what it normally was, and so they sent this guy this way. And I want to find some of his discussions, but another thing that they talked about was the officer's report on, and this was reported at kansascity.com, but it's reported at several other places now. The officer's report on Dodge City meeting walked through presentations from D'Amico and other members of the Kansas Latin American Affairs Commission that highlighted the vague nature of the law and reminded attendees to exercise their Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights when interacting with the law. The officer suggested that D'Amico was lobbying for Democratic Governor Laura Kelly and said he was concerned by her comments encouraging undocumented Kansans to engage in politics and volunteer in their local election offices. He said, "I felt like this implied that illegal aliens could become involved in election tampering."
That's exactly what's going on.
And so, you know, we were concerned about this from the get-go, that people were going to use this new law. I don't know if you were at the meeting. I was at the meeting when Shannon Francis and Ron Reichman had a town hall meeting over here.
I think I missed that one.
And there were some concerns. Mayor Laura brought up some concerns. He thought this might be an avenue that could make it harder for undocumented or illegals. Janice Vasquez also shared that she said this was going to clearly target, that she would be targeted because she's a person of color driving a car, and that she would be able to be pulled over just because she's a person of color driving a car. And that's not how the law is interpreted at all.
You can make a lot of money getting pulled over just because your color skin.
Yeah, I mean, I would be the first in line to say if anyone that ever happens to, we'll fight your fight for you, because no one should be pulled over because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
What was happening, and the way this case came out, was in Lawrence, there was a stop. And a guy noticed 3 young females in the back seat, and they all looked pretty afraid. But because of the way the law was written, he couldn't question or talk with them the way that he needed to, and you know, that he believed they were being trafficked. Well, so they changed the law so that he can, and officers can ask certain questions on traffic stops, But you can't, it's kind of like the seatbelt law. You know, you can't just be pulled over and say, you're not wearing your seatbelt, here's your ticket. You have to be pulled over saying you're speeding and you weren't wearing your seatbelt law, or you did an illegal lane change. You know, the same kind of thing, if you pull over a car, you know, you've got to have certain probable cause. And if your only probable cause is, well, it looks like a Hispanic's driving, I'm going to pull it over. That'll get you out of a job, and it should. But if you say, you know, this car is built for 6 people and I can count 12 people in it, you know, you can pull that car over and find out, why are there 12 people in this car? You know, that's clearly beyond the safety. There's not enough seatbelts for this. There's not enough, why do we have 12 people in this car? But anyway, it was designed to help that. There was people trying to characterize it that said, if a grandma who was here illegally was driving, or even was legal, but was driving their illegal grandchild or something to school, that was trafficking. And that is not the case. That the person being trafficked has to be taken for an illegal purpose. Going to school is not an illegal purpose in Kansas, you know, and the driver has to be compensated for it. Some of these people against it was trying to make the case that, so if I give them a stick of gum to the driver, that's me paying the driver. So if someone gives me a stick of gum and they're illegal and I'm just giving them a ride to the doctor, I'm going to get arrested. No, and no. But this is where they were going with trying to show, you know, that this law was somehow going to target or harm people. The two situations that have to exist is a person being trafficked has to be being trafficked for a legal purpose. And legal purpose can also mean there's a farmer who's hiring me for $1 an hour. Well, that's illegal. Why is that farmer trying to just pay you $1 an hour and you're illegal? You're not supposed to be here,
No,
and
I'm
you're
not.
paying the driver. See what I'm saying? Is there's conditions that have to exist before that driver gets in trouble.
I think one of the difficult things is when you're pulled over, you know, he has to have an articulable suspicion that you, or some kind of evidence that you broke a law. He can't just pull you over for any old reason, you know. And you know, I know for myself, you know, if somebody pulls me over and asks me, do you know how fast you're going? I said, yeah, I know exactly how fast I was going. How fast you think I was going? You know, I'm that guy. You know, but I think some of the problem is that people don't particularly know what their rights are in the United States, and unfortunately, we do have some officers out there that don't know the law and or are just unwilling to follow it. And so people that are doing bad things out there, that are trafficking, that are into drugs and different things like that, tend to get away with it, even though they may find people that they're trafficking, they may find the drugs in the car, but when you go about getting that information illegally, and then it's all thrown out. And so I think for both sides is that people need to know their rights. The police officers that are pulling people over need to follow the law, and instead of hoping that the people in the car don't know what their rights are. And I think that one of the things that is going to happen is that people, when the police are actually following the law to the point. Now, this guy going to the meeting is a good thing, going in, finding out what's going on. That's just called doing your job, you know. But we also have to be careful that we're not setting up and depending on people not knowing what their rights are, because that stuff could come back in your face real bad.
Yeah, and you got to make sure that officers are properly trained so that they do a proper traffic stop. You know, we talked about the Kansas two-step in the past.
Yep,
you know,
we did.
Where they only have a certain amount of time on a traffic stop to
20
take care of
minutes,
what
I
they're going
think
to
it
take
is.
care of. And then the law used to be where if they'd step away from that and then come back, that starts that clock all over again. Well, they've addressed that in Kansas. But here recently, I saw the video, and it was over in front of the Kentucky Fried Chicken. A car got pulled over, and they started videotaping it, and they put it out there, and the people got pulled over. They weren't from here. I can't remember where they were from, but they were speeding through town. They got pulled over. The officer after they looked at their document, said, "Hey, I need you to step out of the vehicle." And they said, "What? Well, what for?" And I can tell you what's never going to work for you. If you claim you're some international citizen with international rights, and these were not Hispanic people, that's not going to get you off. You know, they're not going to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead and drive on." You know, once they ask you to step out of the car, whether they're in the right or the wrong, you need to step out of the car. Now, if it's wrong, you can take them to court, and like you said, you can make a lot of money on a bad traffic stop. But fighting them, and eventually here in Liberal, they had to break the window and bring the driver out, and you know, he got arrested. But they kept saying, "You didn't tell us why you pulled us over." And they had clearly told them they were going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. They were going 50 and a 30. Yeah. And he said, "You have been told, and I'm asking you, I need you to step out of the car." And it went on for half an hour or so.
Situations like that, my advice to anybody, when you're asked to step out of the car, at that point, I would employ the advice from a lawyer: stop talking.
Yeah.
just shut up and deal with it later. You know, because anything. I think people just don't understand that the Supreme Court has said that a police officer can extract information from you even if they're lying to you. You know,
which I disagree with, but they can.
Yeah, they can. They can lie to you. Know, I have you on radar going 20 miles over the speed limit. Well, a guy that may not even have a radar in the car, but if you own up to it, he's got that chest cam on or his mic on. You know, you don't stand a chance in court. You know, so you just shut up. You know.
Yeah. Well, I got pulled over on a sting operation here at the railroad tracks. It got dismissed, but I wasn't just going to take that. Now the stop, I followed, gave him everything he wanted, and did that, and I let him know. I said, you know, this is an illegal stop. I said, there is no way I ran the arms, and he gave me, and he was not a local officer. He was a Union Pacific, which they can police their deals, and he was out of Nebraska.
Oh my goodness.
But I challenged that. The thing is, they were doing this all day, and I'm W. My last name is W. So I'm in the courthouse with 50 other people, all charged with the exact same thing at district court.
Oh, wow.
And it was like $400 and some a person. So do your math on 49 times $450 and find out how much they made that day. But the last guy in there that was me, and was the only guy to say not guilty. And I took my evidence and I took the law, what the law says has to exist to violate crossing the tracks. None of it. There's 3 things that had to exist. None of it existed. And so they dismissed the case. Everyone should have had their case dismissed.
That's what I say. A lot of these people, and you know, and I'm not saying all officers, because they're people just like we are, and we all have our, all of our failures. But people have to know what their rights are, and they have to be willing to look up the law and find out what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and then stand up for it. Don't just say, okay, it's only $50, it's only $100, and I'm late and I got to go. I asked one officer. I got stopped. I think I was on my way to Arkansas, and he pulled me over, and he wanted to know how fast I was going. I said, "Yeah, I know how fast I'm going," and that was before I had turned the camera on. I record every interaction. Every time I get pulled over, as soon as I see those lights, I turn the camera on and point it toward the window. And he wanted me to step out of the car, and I said, "Well, it's cold out. I really don't want to." He says, "Well, you're getting out. Are you going to take me to jail if I don't get out?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, based on that, I'll get out then." That was it. And he was nice enough to kind of realize that I wasn't some kind of Neanderthal pushover, and he kind of relented and let me go after about 7 or 8 minutes. But I think people need to know what their rights are, and it's really helpful if the law enforcement would truly police themselves and get rid of the bad cops because they make it bad for everybody.
Yeah, same thing I say about officials. Sometimes we desperately need officials, and we give the wrong person a whistle, and they ruin it for everybody.
Everybody.
And I always talk about Potsy locally. I mean, Rick Potts is a great official, and he's a model. You know, win or lose, you feel good about playing if he's the official because he just makes it fun. You know, and he keeps everybody engaged and entertained. And even when he calls someone like he blew his whistle in a little Kids Inc. game on the foul, and he asked the girl, goes, "Now, did you foul her?" She said, "No." He said, "Well, I think you did." And she said, "I know." And you know, just the laughter in the gym. People, whether you won or lost, you're like, this is a great day. You know, does the kids had fun, played a game? But you get the wrong person to whistle. You got kids bawling, you got parents yelling. You know, it changes the whole thing. And a bad cop messes it up for everybody on the force. Nobody wants a bad cop. And I hope that in Kansas, you know, we're doing proper training. And the one thing I noticed on that stop that happened here where they broke the window, that officer, more officers came. I mean, this was, we've checked, we've double checked, we've triple checked, we've done everything that we legally can. Yes, he's supposed to step out of the vehicle. He's refusing to do so. We're going to have to move to force. I mean, it got to that level. And I respect the local law enforcement. I don't know that everywhere that you go that you would, because there are bad ones out there. And you know, but you got to just trust and follow. When I was younger, I had a hot little pickup and tinted windows, and I used to have to go down to Tucumcari and help the paper down there. The same company owned both papers at that time. We're independent now, but so I was a computer guy, so I had to go down there when they'd have computer issues and help them and stuff. And so I was driving past through the Texas Panhandle. And in one town, I won't say which town, but I got pulled over almost every time I went down there because I had tinted windows, had this hot little pickup truck. They'd pull me over, you know, and they'd say, you know, you were going 3 miles over the speed limit or something like that. And they'd say, you know, where are you coming from? What's your destination? And I would tell them, you know, I'm coming from Liberal, Kansas. I'm going to Tucumcari. I work at the newspaper in Liberal. I'm going to help the newspaper in Tucumcari, you know, and they'd flash their light, you know, see, you know, don't see anything of interest in my vehicle, and they'd say, okay, well, what's your speed? And I'm, okay, thank you, and that was it.
I'm a little harder than that. It's none of your business where I'm going.
You know, I don't have anything. You know, if it's going to ease my day and get me out of here, and you know, now do I have to tell them? Not necessarily, but do I want to escalate this? No. I want to get this over and get back on the road and get to what I need to do.
And I think that's the thing, though, is exercising your rights should not equate to an escalation. It should not. If they're your rights, you know, the law enforcement should know what your rights are just as well as you should, and they shouldn't step over those. That's a violation. You know, they become the criminal at that point. And as law enforcement is necessary. And I've run into some officers, man, to where after they let me go, I went to their station and asked for their captain to give them a good report on the guy. I mean, there's some great guys out there, you know, that do their job with a smile on their face, and in every instance, they're public servants. You know, protect and serve, that's them. But you have a small handful of them that are darn near just rogues. And the good ones won't snatch them by the ruff of the collar.
Yeah, this guy that worked for the UP should never have been given a badge.
Should never have been. Yeah.
And so when I went to and I pleaded not guilty, so what they do when you do that is then they say, okay, we'll set a court date, and you have time for discovery, which is what everyone before, you know, to collect your evidence and all this. And I said, well, I want to talk to the officer that pulled me over, because he said I had 3 seconds had stopped in 3 seconds. And they said, yeah, we'll get you the number. So the county attorney's office got me the number. And we have recording devices here. Plus, Kansas is a one-party state, so as long as one party is aware it is recorded, it's legal. So I'm calling the guy in Nebraska. So I called there and I said, yeah, my name is Earl Watt. I got pulled over on such date. I'm calling your office to talk with the officer. And the guy has on the phone goes, well, that was me.
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay, well, I have a few questions for you. He goes, I don't have to talk to you. And I said, well, actually, I just came from the court. I plead not guilty. They said I have a right to collect up my evidence, and the judge gave me your number so that I could talk to you. And he said, well, anything I have to say to you, I'll say in court. Click.
Wow.
And I had that recorded. And so then there's a conference where you go and you meet with the prosecutors to discuss that. And I showed them my evidence, and I talked about the 3 seconds, and I talked about the stopping distance, the speed I was going. I had everything down, but also that there has to be a clear and immediate danger at the intersection. There wasn't. There has to be an audible sound of a horn of the deal. There wasn't. What the law says is required for violating the deal. None of it existed. And so they said, yeah, he says he's got, recording of it. So we're going to talk to him and see what the recording is. And if, otherwise we're just going to dismiss this. And I said, I would love to have that recording too. I said, because I asked him, I said, this is entrapment. And he said, no, this is a sting. I said, so I want that, if there's a copy of that, I want that too, because I'll present that on my case. And so I got a letter in like 2 days after that saying, it's dismissed. And yeah, there are bad ones out there.
Yeah.
But
But there are a lot of good ones out there. And I'll have to say that the vast majority of officers that over my lifetime that I've had contact with have been really nice guys.
And I want to say this for our local officers. I was so ticked off about that, and Jim, it was back when I was on the Historical Society board, and that's where I was going, was to a meeting over there. So first of all, I'm just fuming about getting a $400 and some ticket on my way over there for that I shouldn't have got. But then on my way back, they're still doing it. And I saw that they had somebody else pulled over. So I pulled over, and I was going to tell that driver, hey, I'm going to plead not guilty, and you should plead not guilty too. So I park and I get on the sidewalk. Well, that officer saw me there, and he said, do not interfere with a traffic stop. And I said, I'm just standing on the sidewalk. I'm just standing on the public sidewalk. So he called, and a couple of local officers came, and they said, Earl, what's going on? I said, what are you guys doing?
Exactly.
I said, you're pulling people over up here on crossing up here. And they said, Earl, we don't have anything to do with this. This is UP only. They said, what we got a call for was there's an organization that actually brings awareness about traffic, about railroad stops. Mm-hmm. They were operating out by the landfill, and they were handing out Sonic. They'd have you pulled over, but they would give you a Sonic card that'd say, hey, just want to make you aware there's a railroad crossing here to make sure you're watching that. So thanks for pulling over. Here's a Sonic card for stopping. Just be aware. They just raise awareness. But because UP had to come regulate that, and they had a presence here, they decided to traffic stop this one.
Oh, wow.
And so the local officers were like, Earl, we don't have anything to do with this. And I said, well, I'm going to fight this. And I said, I'm going to wait till he's done, and I'm going to tell this driver he ought to fight it too. They said, okay. They said, but just wait till he pulls out. Wait till his car leaves. And I said, I will. And so that guy, that Union Pacific, which was a Union Pacific law enforcement truck, pulls back to go back and sting somebody else. So I go up to this driver. He had a little blue pickup, and I said, hey, I'd fight that ticket. And he looked at me and he said, no speak English.
Poor guy.
I was like, dang, I waited here. I'm going to help this guy. And he was probably one of those guys that paid that $400 some that day with everybody else.
I'll bet he was.
But I don't take that out on the local guys. The local guys
Yeah.
didn't have anything to do with that. But if it was the local guys, it would have been done in city court. But
Right.
it's a UP guy, so that made it go to district court. And that's where it went to $400 and some. But know your rights, and look, I was probably on the edge of him wanting to pull me out of the car because I wasn't friendly I was hot about it. I was like,
get it.
And he was hot back to me. He didn't try to de-escalate it either. I think he was hoping, oh, just do something. Give me a reason to drag you out of that car. And I was, and I got some swats in junior high for stepping across the line, but I missed a lot because I knew right where the line was and how far to go. And I was right with that guy, right at that line. But yeah, know your rights. And, but also, if he had asked me to step out of the car, I would have. Mm-hmm. I would have done everything I was asked to do, but I should have called the local guys and said, I need you guys down here to watch over this because this guy's got it in for me. and I want to know that I'm getting a fair shake here.
Yeah, I'll ask for a supervisor in a hot second. So you better get your supervisor out here because you got a screw loose, you know. And you know, I had a guy over in Westminster when I was driving for Uber. I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go out real early in the morning, you know, and I'd turn in the outside lane instead of the inside lane. 3 o'clock in the morning, there was 3 cars out there. There was the police officer and 1 other car. I turned the corner. I'm a half a mile down the road, pitch dark, nobody but me. He pulls me over. I says, "What's the problem, officer?" "Oh, you made an illegal lane change." I said, "Are you kidding me? There's nobody out here but us." You know, the law's the law. Later that day, I see the same guy flying 75 mile an hour in a 40 with his lights on, and as soon as he gets to the corner that where his precinct is a half a mile down the road, he turns the lights off, slows down. The law's the law.
Now I will say this. In the last 15, 20 years, I've only been pulled over twice.
Really?
That was one. And then I did get a ticket at the intersection in Sublette for passing before I was through the solid yellow line. And I did it, and I didn't fuss with the guy a bit. I said, "Yep, I know. I've been following this semi. This was my best shot around him. And if I'd have waited 10 more feet, I would have been fine."
Yeah.
And the officer was nice as can be. I would have invited him to Christmas dinner. I mean, he was not a fussy or anything, but he, you know, "Here's your ticket and this," and he explained all to me, and I said, "Thanks."
Yeah.
My daughter was in the car with me. I had taken her to an orthodontist appointment, and
Yeah,
you know, she saw that. You know, I told her, you know, you don't fuss with them. You
Yeah.
just, I did it, and I'll pay the fine, and you know.
I mean, when you're cold busted, you know, what are you gonna do?
It is what it is.
I think the last speeding ticket I got was, what, about 7, 8 years ago or something like that. I was on my way. I had just crossed the Colorado-Kansas line coming into Liberal, and there was a big mound of dirt where they had been doing road construction. There was a highway. As I passed that mound of dirt, I looked in the rearview mirror. There's a highway patrolman hiding behind a pile of dirt, and he jumps out and grabs me. You tend to act a little different when you got the family in the car with you.
Yeah.
There's a little hill up there that there's always one sitting there, not always, but a lot of the time, you know, you come sailing down there and you pop over that hill and there he is
There
sitting
he
right
is,
there.
yeah.
I've seen that more than once.
I had a friend. Now, when I go to ball games, I get someone else to do the driving because I'll pass out. So I get other people to help with the driving. Well, I had a friend who was driving for me, coming back from a ball game, and somewhere along the line, he got flip-flopped to whether he had the brights or the lows on. And what he was doing is when cars got close, he was flipping the brights on, and then after the car cleared, he was flipping them off back to normal. Well, one of them was an officer. And the guy spun around and pulled us over. And this guy has since passed away, but the guy driving for me, you know, the officer was mad. You know, he said, "Give me your license," and and he said, "Well, what'd I do?" And he said, "I wasn't speeding." He said, "No, you flashed your brights in my face." And the guy said, "No, I didn't." And I was like, "Yeah, you did." I knew he did.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yes, you did, and that's road rage. And I want to have, give me your license and your insurance." And he took that, and he said, "All right, but I didn't do that." And I'm like, when the officer left, I said, "Ron, you did. You got flip-flopped. You've been doing it wrong for the past 20 miles." I said, you know, he said, I am? I said, "Yeah."
How hard he hit you for not telling him?
Well, I said, but stop fussing, because at that time I was still working. You know, I had different owners at the time. I didn't own it yet, and I said, "This vehicle doesn't belong to me, and I cannot have this thing impounded." I said, "So you're going to do whatever he tells you, you know, and we'll deal with it later." But he gave him a warning, and then as the officer's leaving, he said, "Well, he said I didn't do it either, but I don't. He said I did it too, but I don't think I did." You know, and I'm just like, "Let it go. He's letting you off." And the officer was mad, you know. But then he got flip-flopped right. You know, this is bright. This is not bright.
Yeah.
And
See out there how one is dim.
yeah, yeah. But but we do respect law enforcement. Now,
Yeah, I think it'd be
yeah, it sounds
great.
like you got pulled over a lot more than I did. You mentioned a lot more times of having instances.
Well, my last name's White, and we're just. You ever heard that old phrase? Original Kansas Leadfoot. We got that from our dad, and I mean, my sisters, when they were in their younger years, drove faster than I did. 95, 105 was my limit, but those girls, gee whiz. I was thinking it'd be great to have a captain, lieutenant, or something like that to come in and have a discussion like that, about driver's rights and and how to, the different commands that an officer would give, and what's the proper and legal response, from the driver, because. Quite honestly, I don't think everybody knows that. Some people get a little bit of information. Well, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, and they really don't research it. And then find themselves in trouble. But I think it'd be great.
Yeah,
if we can get somebody in to talk about things
and
like that.
I think we have a good working relationship with our local law enforcement, and maybe Jim, I don't know how familiar was Gene the sheriff, or was it still McBride when you were a county commissioner?
I think Bill was still a sheriff, but I don't know, maybe Gene took over just before I got off. I don't remember for sure.
But we might have to check with them. That would be a good thing so that people know, what you should do, what you don't have to do. Mm-hmm. But I'd say this, even if you don't have to, even if you don't have to, if it's not a big deal, unless you just feel like, well, wait, I really don't have to do this. I'm not going to do this. You don't have to. But if it's not that meaningful, and it's not that big of a deal, but.
And to me, even my smallest, so-called smallest of rights is important. All of them are important, and there's a way to be nasty about it, and there's a way to be respectful about it as well. But I think it would just really, really help the population. It would help police and law enforcement as well, for an educated populace to know what's expected of them, that's lawfully expected of them.
Sure. Now, let's say some officer just showed up at my house and said, hey, we think that there might be something in your house. We don't have a warrant, but we think you might have an Uzi in here. Mm. You mind if we go ahead and look? And I'd say, I don't have an Uzi, but no, that's crossing the line that, you're going to have to prove to some judge that there's enough evidence for you to come into my house and look for something like that. Yeah. If a cop's just saying, hey, where are you headed? And I say, oh, I'm going up here to such and such, Now, if I feel like, oh, what is that your concern? I mean, that has nothing to do with what I'm doing on this road. It doesn't. Maybe that is an illegal question. But I'm also trying to, just lighten the load here, keep things easy and light. But yeah, what can they ask? What can't they ask? That'd be good. We might have to look into that. Yeah. Well, and one thing that didn't get asked was any questions to Hunter Biden the other day, because he decided not to go to a backdoor meeting. He decided if it wasn't in public where he could grandstand, he didn't want to do it at all.
Good old Hunter.
So we're going to talk about that. Fall off the bone ribs, dripping with our signature barbecue sauce. Tender pulled pork and brisket smoked to perfection. All served with family recipe home-style sides. It's all waiting for you at the Brick House Barbecue and Brew. Open 7 days a week, your barbecue appetite can be satisfied anytime for lunch or dinner. Brick House serves full dinners, combos, sandwiches, and take-home packs. Enjoy a variety of brews on tap or a mixed drink. Shaken, not stirred. Give your taste buds a treat at Brick House Barbecue and Brew, 24 East 2nd Street in Liberal. Like us on Facebook and see our full menu at brickhouselk.com.
Where are they going?
So there's a couple of issues now with Hunter not testifying. You probably heard by now he chose not to do a closed-door session. The reason that the Republicans wanted a closed-door session was because then counsel can ask questions. and it's 20 minutes instead of 5 minutes at a time. And then because in 5 minutes you can just talk and about the weather and everything else and blow that 5 minutes and never answer the question, filibuster. But in 20 minutes, you're going to have to answer that question and get an answer in, and you're also speaking to legal counsel. So he didn't want to do that. The thing is, by not doing it, defying a subpoena of Congress is a violation of the law. You're legally required to respond and show up to a subpoena. He didn't. Now the question is, did he converse with his dad first, or the president that encouraged his son not to follow the law? And the reason why that there's maybe evidence that happened was because Jean-Pierre, when she was asked about it, she said, the president was aware of what his son was going to say. Well, that means that there was a discussion before he decided not to testify to Congress, which is President Biden encouraging his son to violate the law.
Yeah.
And so, we have that situation. You also have that the House did pass the impeachment inquiry to go ahead and have the inquiry into whether or not the president has violated the oath of the office of the presidency. So you've got these two things playing right now. I guess we'll move across the table, start with Rice and move this way, but what's your thoughts on this impeachment inquiry?
Well, it was rather interesting, not surprising that he refused to go. There's been others that are thrown in jail or about to be thrown in jail anyway for refusing to go testify before Congress, but not Hunter. But anyway, I seen this on Just the News this morning. John Solomon was reporting this. It said Jason Foster, founder of Empower Oversight Whistleblower Center, says after Hunter's speech outside Congress yesterday in protest of Oversight Chairman James Comer's subpoena for him to testify before Congress on his business dealings. Foster says it is unlikely that the Department of Justice will enforce any contempt of Congress orders again Hunter, but says that the fact is that Father President Joe was apparently, according to Press Secretary Jean-Pierre, was speaking to him about his plan to defy Congress congressional subpoena. This is now is a legitimate issue for impeachment inquiry about whether or not Joe Biden was a party to a plan to obstruct Congress, and has now become a valid, legitimate question for the impeachment inquiry. So, there's a lot of questions about whether Hunter and Joe ever discussed business dealings, and apparently they did discuss this one. And of course, Hunter during his testimony claimed that, well, they was all just picking on him, and had been for 6 years and all of that. But you got to remember, all this started about the time that his laptop became the property of that guy that was running the computer shop, and he got to looking through some of the stuff that Hunter had in there, and became very concerned about it, and turned that over to the FBI, and the FBI looked through it and said, oh, we can't let this happen. We can't let anybody know about this. Well, like the truth always does, it eventually seeks, the kind of like cream, it always rises to the top. And, these whistleblowers came in and sat down and testified before Congress that a lot of this stuff, if not all of it, are true. And Joe had discussions with Hunter. The money rolled in. All of that. But if you listen to any of these left-leaning news agencies or whoever it is, they're all nothing to it. That's just all made up stuff. And Hunter's innocent, and poor little me, and those kind of things. But I hope that, well, I don't know whether I think this guy's probably right. The Justice Department will ignore this on account of it's Hunter Biden. Had it been Donald Trump's sons or daughter or anyone else, I think probably the Justice Department would have been on top of them before they were ever able to finish their speech. So, you know, but it is what it is.
One of the things that kind of came to my mind when I saw that was a clear picture of a two-tier justice system. On the one hand, if you look at Paul Manafort and other people, you have a Republican that's caught in the airport when he was literally almost across the street, when they could have just given him a phone call, he'd have turned himself in. But they catch him in the airport, they shackle him and shuffle him out, and CNN just happens to be there. Another one, they go to his house, full automatic weaponry, 6 o'clock in the morning, drag his wife out of the house in her night clothes, embarrasses her, and then drags him out in his night clothes, 6 o'clock in the morning, and again, CNN just happens to be across the street about 10 minutes before the FBI shows up. And these kind of things, you know, puts a damper on the American people believing and wanting desperately for there to be equal justice across the board. And there's too many instances of this, blatant instances, where it's not. And to have somebody like Hunter Biden, and I think we all know what his background is, and get in front of cameras instead of going over like everybody else should when they're subpoenaed, you show up. Otherwise, you get arrested. But I'm pretty sure that he'll sleep in his bed pretty secure and comfortably for the next 6 months or so, at least until his daddy is thrown out of office. You know, when he gets in front of the cameras talking about how his integrity, I don't know where he got it from, that his integrity was going to be impugned in that office. But what it does is, it's like you were saying, Jim, and that what it does is it stops them from all of the theatrics. The Democrats will just come in behind every Republican and cover for him. The Republicans would ask him a question, him and haw around it and waste the 5 minutes, and it becomes a circus. You know, I've watched enough of those hearings in the House and the Senate to know that it's just a joke. It makes absolutely no sense for a senator or a House member to have just 5 minutes and then have the chairman, especially in the Senate, to insist that you let them filibuster and not answer the question that was asked. They continually answer questions that were not asked of him. But in the situation that Hunter was supposed to go in, as it was said, he was going to either have to answer those questions or plead the fifth. He was going to do something. And he didn't want to do it. And I guarantee you he gets away with it. He's not going to get arrested in the middle of the night. He's not going to jail. And if he does, he'll be in there for 2 or 3 hours before he gets a pardon from his father. It's just not going to last long. And I remember when President Trump was getting close to that last 6 months of his office, the liberal press was going crazy. Is he going to pardon his son? Well, of course, they hadn't done anything. They hadn't been convicted of anything. They were just accused of a bunch of things that they hadn't done. But we see the hoopla and the hysteria when Manafort and all the Republicans were charged with things, hadn't been found guilty of anything yet, all over the news, national news. It's a national crisis. Democrats get charged with things that they actually have done, like Menendez in New Jersey, nothing, blank, gone. And I think this really does put a damper on the electorate to be apathetic about our politics nowadays.
So, B, what's your thoughts on, you know, Biden skipping out on the hearing, defying a subpoena, a congressional subpoena? We'll see if they do hold him. You know, one of the other guys, Roger Stone, is the other guy you're talking about.
Exactly.
That they came guns blaring because he didn't show up to Congress when they called him to Congress. But you know, what's your take on him turning that down and then them going ahead and starting an inquiry, an impeachment inquiry?
Well, I'm not surprised with the Hunter thing. I mean, he's got the Department of Justice in the back pocket, you know, along with his dad. So they're not gonna arrest him. They're not gonna do anything about it because the Bidens have him under their control. I mean, it's pretty evident. And when I think about the impeachment hearing, to me, if Biden is so squeaky clean, what would he worry about? Why would he worry about anything being found if everything is above board? You know, I read an article the other day was talking about when Biden was vice president, he was basically living off little money. I mean, he didn't have anything, and now all of a sudden he's a multimillionaire. You know, because of politics. Where's all that money coming from? Because I know the president and vice president don't make a very good salary. So how all of a sudden is all this money flowing through his family? I'd be concerned if I was a Biden right now as to what the inquiry would find out and what would come about it. So.
Well, the one thing is, you know, and I've seen this posted, but you had the president who didn't take a salary for 4 years, donated it to different causes across the country and throughout, even through the government. Gave one time presidents get paid quarterly. Mm-hmm. And so took one of his quarterly checks and gave it to the National Forestry Service, the national parks. You know, and then you got another guy who takes all the money, spends what is given, you know, there, and then is somehow come up with some more money from foreign deposits into his son's account, which ends up in his account. But anyway, you may remember these two whistleblowers from the IRS were pointing out that they couldn't ask certain questions, that they weren't allowed to do certain. Well, now that this is an inquiry, they were able to bring in the woman who wouldn't allow those questions, Leslie Wolf.
Yep.
Well, all of a sudden, Leslie Wolf, you know, Assistant U.S. Attorney in Delaware, no longer works for the DOJ.
Isn't that something?
Imagine that.
And you know, but she was brought in and she had to do a deposition behind closed doors, and so who knows what she said, but she's the one who said you can't ask about the big guy.
Right.
You know, you can't ask about any foreign business dealings. You can't. It was like, then what can we ask? You know, how are we going to?
Whose government is it?
You know, and so and you can't ask even who Dad is. You can't ask Hunter Biden, who he referred to when he said Dad. I think there's only one answer to that.
She told those two investigators that there should be nothing in your report referring to the big guy or any variation of it. Nothing in your report.
Yeah, it says someone needs to redraft the affidavit. There should be nothing about political figure one in here. And political figure one, Joe Biden.
Yep.
Nothing to connect these two. There will be nothing to connect these two together.
Can't talk about Trippy.
That's what they were doing. So, what do you think about she's no longer part of the DOJ?
Yeah, I think it goes to the strategery that the Democrats are willing to do. That they pride themselves, and you have to give them credit, that they're always a step or two ahead of the Republicans and of justice. And it's easy for them to do because they run the Justice Department. All of these other departments, like the FISA court, have you ever wondered why nobody knows what political leanings any of these judges have? I understand not knowing their names, but nobody knows. But somehow or another, the FBI can just whiz in there and just request something with, you know, some of the flakiest of information, and they keep getting these blasted warrants. And the FISA court at one time of last year said that we're really upset about that, but nobody did anything. The Democrats run that city, and they run these agencies, and so they keep a step ahead, and they're willing to do things, even if it looks bad on its face. They'll do it anyway. Why? Because they'll get away with it. The Republicans will just skip right by it and let them get away with it.
So, what do you think? You got this woman who was the one who limited the scope, wouldn't allow the questions to be asked, told the IRS, nope, you're not asking this, you're not asking that, you're not making any connections here. And so they're like, this isn't normal.
Well,
this isn't the way this is supposed to go.
You know, it will be very interesting to see when she testifies under oath how her under oath story compares to her just general comments, and what she was allowed. There's good possibility, there's some serious charges can be brought, or well, they should be, I say. If you're a Republican, there's some serious charges. If you're a Democrat, not so much, apparently. But, I think it'll be interesting to see, what her testimony is, and how it compares to her original thinking on that thing when she was working for, the Department of Justice. So, I don't know, it should be interesting because we're finding in a lot of instances that what those guys were doing once they get under oath, that it might be something different, or it might be something that, they were forced to do. I know there's a lot of those whistleblowers.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them right now, that are testifying before Congress and have been for, a month or two, talking about when they worked for the DOJ and some of the actions that they were forced into that they didn't feel was right, but in order to keep their paycheck coming, that's what they did.
Yeah.
So,
There was one other person. I can't remember the names of it, but she was director of the IRS, and this was back when
Lois
a lot of Lois, yeah,
Lerner,
and Lerner, yeah. But
Yeah.
but when they brought her in front of Congress, she obfuscated, she denied, and all of these different things like that. And what's amazing is that you could have these people dead to rights. You could have 2, 3, 4, 5 witnesses to verify what they've done, but somehow or another they get in front of Congress, they weasel themselves out of it with the help of every Democrat in there, that every time they talk, they apologize for them having to be there, to answer for, breaking the law, and they just walk away from it. I think her and there were a few others in that era that just retired, walked off with their pension and forgot about it.
Yep.
And a handful of them just went to different departments. And it's scandalous and it's disgusting that our government continues to operate in that manner day after day after day.
Well, I'm going to share some polls with you of where things are right now looking ahead, but then I have a question for you, Larry, because we know that we've seen some demographic shifts, and we've talked about some other things earlier in the show, and I want to see what you think about how these relate. But looking at the newest numbers, Bloomberg just had a whole bunch of polling numbers drop, and Bloomberg is again no bastion of conservatism. That is not some ultra right wing. That's from the left, but Bloomberg and Morning Consult joined up together. So in Georgia, Trump up 6. If you throw in, that's head to head. If you throw in West and Stein and Kennedy, Trump up 7. In Pennsylvania, Trump up 2. In Michigan, Trump up 4. In Wisconsin, Trump up 4. In Nevada, Trump up 3. In Arizona, Trump up 4. North Carolina, Trump up 10. So a lot of these states that Trump, all these states except North Carolina, he lost last time. He's leading in the polls right now. We were talking earlier about traffic stops and things like that. I think there's no secret that a lot of black people, especially black men, have always, had an issue with getting detained by law enforcement, things like that. Do you think that, seeing what's happening to Trump, what the justice system is doing to him, do you think there's any sympathy factor? Because we've seen that the black vote, particularly black men, are polling a lot more for Trump than ever. I mean, a Republican is lucky to get 5 or 6% of the black vote. That's a good election. Right now, he's getting 15, 16%. Do you think that, when they see how that Trump is being treated by the legal system, do you think that has any bearing on the reflection of the black vote in these polls?
I think it has a lot to do with it. One of the things that people in general, regardless of what demographics or what their background is, can identify with people that go through the same kind of mistreatment that you've gone through. You somehow or another find some kind of a kinship or a brotherhood with that individual, even though you would have previously disagreed with them vehemently on some things. But it almost not really justifies, but it kind of brings into light, see, I'm not the only one that feels this way. You know, you have you have somebody else that's completely different than I am that is going through the same thing, and I think that that's a large part of this demographic shift on the male black population that is seeing what's going on with the federal government, at least as far as Donald Trump is concerned. You know, so I think that one is going to hold. It may not hold at the level that it is, just like the polls. When I see these polls, they look eerily like the ones from 4 years ago in 2000, and then we wake up the next morning and they've all flipped. So when I look at these polls, I think, well, that's nice, except these are margins that the Democrats can overcome with just 2 vans. You know, they could stuff those vans with enough ballots to throw each and every one of these states right back over into the blue. And so we want our elections to be fair. We want them to be honest. We want to be able to trust the numbers. But there's 2 things going on. One, again, the margin is so small that the Democrats can cheat and flip this like they did in 2000. Yeah, I'm an election denier. I don't care. And the other thing is that it's sometimes when we see our guy ahead, we stay at home instead of voting. And so I tend to think, I tend to think that sometimes the media is being a little sadistic and sneaky in their reporting. It's almost designed to get Republicans to stay at home, to have the idea, yep, we got it, no sense of being in a hurry, Trump's got it. Well, he had it last time, and it was taken away from him, because I've never seen an election turn around the way that one did. That was just obvious to anybody that election was stolen.
Well, I know you have one person up here beside you that believes that way 100%. I believe that there were irregularities. I don't know if it was enough in some of these states that tend to be liberal states.
You ought to see Dinesh D'Souza's movie.
Yeah, the
what
mules.
Was it, 200 Mules? Or
yeah,
yeah, something
we
like
did.
that.
We showed it here.
20,000, I think it was.
That. And I'm not saying that you don't have a legitimate concern about that. That's why I think it's legitimate to ask the question and not get yourself put in jail for asking a question about whether the election was legitimate or not. I think if all the polls in all of these states continue to show these numbers and they all somehow do that, then America's system is gone anyway.
I think to some degree it is.
We got
there's
nobody went to jail over that. Nobody went to jail over the election in 2000. Nobody.
There's several states that are going to paper ballots and doing away with the machines.
Yeah, I think Mike Lindell is going across the country trying to get that done.
I think the other day Arkansas voted to do away with the machines and go back to paper ballots.
Yeah, I knew she would.
My problem though is some of the fraud we've discovered that we know is fraud was frauded with paper ballots. That election up in Connecticut was them stuffing paper ballots, and it was a Democrat versus Democrat. And the Democrat governor or mayor, it was a mayor's race. And they caught the Democratic vice chair of the city stuffing the ballot box, paper ballots that they'd went and collected. The thing about paper, I'm not...
Equal opportunity thieves.
This is the thing. It's not about whether it's paper or electronic. It's whether you can get your hand on somebody else's ballot. And if it's mailed out to everybody, like in Oregon.
Or have them printed up.
That's a paper ballot, right?
Right.
So if you go to your neighbor's house that didn't live there anymore and go take that ballot and fill it out and sign it and send it in, paper didn't solve the problem.
No.
So to me, I think only you can cast your ballot. Well, and as long as we allow you to go collect up harvesting ballots, turning in ballots, I think about the senior centers. How many of those people are beyond the capacity to even cast a vote, but they're still registered? And how many get mailed there, and how many interns or orderlies or whatever are collecting those up?
I would say, let me say, I would say that there is a mechanism in place in which to catch that, and it's called a signature on record. If, for instance, personally, I can't remember whether I was out of town or whatever it was, but I had the wife fill out my ballot, sign my name to it. They rejected it. Signature didn't match. Simple, easy peasy. There's no big deal to it. The problem is that the people that are running these things through the machines, getting these red flags and overriding them, or not sending them through the machines at all, chunking them in the box, whatever they were doing down in Florida, I believe, or Georgia, I believe it was, and then also in Pennsylvania and some of these other states. Arizona, yeah, some of these other states where they're blatantly on camera cheating. Nobody goes to jail. You think they're going to do it again? Of course they are, because nobody goes to jail. And so our election system, we need people in there. One, we need people in there that can catch it, and two, we need people that are willing to prosecute those that are breaking the law with our elections. And neither do we have at this moment.
Well, I think, part of the problem in some of these states are the signature verifications that have never been cleared up.
Exactly.
There are thousands and thousands of ballots in several states that have never been allowed to compare the signatures with the original, and sure, guys like me, my signature's changed a little bit over time, but not that much.
Yeah, they can pick it up.
But I remember sitting over here on the board of canvass, and sometimes it was pretty difficult to do that. But the way some of these states went through those signature verifications with those machines, that guy was just sitting there poking that button just as fast as he could poke it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
overriding it.
Even if there is a signature verification, if the setting on the machine is low and it's allowing more variations,
That's when somebody
it
needs to
didn't
go to
balk on
jail.
almost any of them. Well, the other thing is a human being. Even if you have a human being, you're trusting that human being is.
Throw their button to pokey with the machine.
But
Turn
how
those
hard?
machines into bars. That's what.
That'll be cellmates.
How hard is that? Let's go to B, who has been an election officer who helps with that. If they were to say, B, we think you allowed something to go in there, so you're going to be facing 20 years for that, and you're just a volunteer, or that, are you going to volunteer for that? Are you going to do that? I don't know if it's minimum wage or what it is. Are you going to put yourself at risk for that and say no? And we won't have volunteers do that, or you say, oh yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, what do you think it is like for the workers of these poll areas, if on trying to determine the accuracy of a signature?
Well, if I'm doing the right thing and following the law, I'm not going to be concerned about any retribution because I'm doing the right thing. The ones I worry about are the ones that don't care, or the ones that don't follow through in doing it right. I could see it easily happening. I will say that working here in Stewart County, what I've done the couple of years, I think everything has been above board. I mean, I've watched them do the signature verifications, check in, the ballots cast, and put in the box and then checked. It's all above board. But you look at these places that have just paper ballots, and to read those signatures, and if you were sitting there looking at that, after a while it's like just send them through. And I think that's what happens. And too many people, there's no repercussions against them for not doing it, so just let it go.
Just let it go.
Forget it. We want to get done. We want to get out of here.
So you've been able to see the difference between a place like Oregon and a place like Kansas up close.
Oh yeah.
And so if you were to rate the Kansas election process on a scale of 1 to 10, what would it be, and what would Oregon's be 1 to 10?
Oregon can we go below 0? I never had any trust in Oregon. I was there 8 years, and I never saw. Of course, again, it's a Democratic state, and so all the Democrats always won. So I always wonder about that, especially when you live out in kind of in the suburbs or away from the big cities. But at least Stewart County, I give Stewart County a 10. I mean, they do a good job and follow through, and I can't say the state because I've never worked any other place in the state, but at least right here locally, I got to give them a 10. But Oregon, as close to 0 as I can get, so or below.
Well, and another benefit that we discovered recently, talking about the digital machine versus a printed one, is an undercount or an overcount. Like when we're voting for city commission, it says vote for 3. But there's 6 names out there. Now, once you've clicked 3 on that computer, it goes, you've done it. It's grayed out. You can't click a 4th one. But if you have a paper one and you're marking and say, oh wait, I do like this guy. Well, that becomes your 4th one. Well, all of those should be thrown out. Because you can't vote for 4. They don't know which one was the 4th one. So none of them count on a paper ballot.
Isn't there instructions on there on how to correct a mistake, like you put an X through it or something like that, that a person that's looking at it can readily identify, okay, they made the mistake and they corrected here? Because at least in Colorado, you know, there's the circle there.
It
That's-
gives you
that's your
instructions,
choice.
but you got to follow it.
Yeah,
But what
exactly.
if you filled in 3 ovals and then you're overdoing something and say, oh, wait a minute, I did see Jim's name on there. I want to vote for him.
And
you
then
filled that
there's a
back
way
in.
to do that, I think in Colorado, and I could be mistaken because I don't make mistakes on my ballot. But I think there's a way to do it, and I think it's to put an X through the mistake and then fill in the oval on the one that you
believe
made.
that's
But
right.
what if you forgot and you didn't exit? This is what I'm saying is you can
Well, if you
overvote
forgot,
and make
it's
that
your
kind of mistake.
responsibility.
It
If you
is. The
forgot,
voter
it's-
messed up.
Yeah, then it's their responsibility for, you know, they're responsible for screwing up the ballot. You know, it does take a level of responsibility on the voter's part to
Yeah.
do it right. You know, the instructions are plainly there.
What a
you
digital
follow
vote,
them.
what a digital vote will allow you to do is it lets you verify it before you finish it, and you can say, "Oh, wait a minute, on my city
back and
one,
change it.
I can go back
Yeah.
and I can."
But we've
back
also
and fix
seen
that.
these machines to where an individual can go through it, make the proper choices, make the proper corrections, verify it, and that machine's programming will change it. And you've sent it in, and you don't know that change is taking place.
But here's what happens
and
here.
that happened a lot in Philly.
But here's what happens here, is it prints you out your ballot.
Yeah, it'll print you out what
But
you
it shows
what you
you.
said. It'll show you what you
You can
said.
look and say,
but
"Yeah,
the
that's
actual
what I
ballot
voted."
is going to be something else.
But the next thing that happens is I gave that to where B was watching. It goes into a box, and then they collect up all those paper ones. Now they're required to pick 2 or 3 precincts
Here.
of what everyone in Kansas.
Yeah, but not in Philly, not in
Oh, no,
Arizona.
no, but I'm
not-
saying
not
I'm
those
comparing the
places.
Kansas system.
Yeah.
So in Kansas, what the Kansas system then is, the state will say, okay, District 1, Precinct 3 for everybody, District 2, Precinct 1. But it'll randomly pick some. And then they have to go through and manually compare. This is what the computer said. This is what the machine said. These are what the manual one said. And they have to be 100%.
Yeah.
So we have systems in the state of Kansas.
But Kansas is
validate
willing
that.
to do it because Kansas isn't on the level of cheating that some of these other states are.
Right, they have
because you're
political
gonna,
machines.
Yeah, you're going to find it in these swing states in Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and places like that. You'll find that one party is willing to throw national elections like throwing a untasty hamburger out the window going down the highway. It doesn't mean anything. To them, it's the means, the end justifies the means, whatever it takes. Because to them, they're fighting a battle, they're fighting a war to them, and they don't care. They really don't, because they know that if one of their own gets in trouble, they're going to get bailed out. They're going to get protected.
Well, when you run the legal system.
And the evidence is that, again, nobody went to jail. And we saw the vans pulling up at 3 o'clock in the morning with boxes and boxes piled up in there for voting. It doesn't take that much.
Well, you've seen those suitcases coming out from under the table that day.
I mean, Popeye could figure this stuff out. You know, you know, if the election closes at 7 o'clock, then you have somebody standing by these boxes out on the corners at 7 o'clock. You lock it down. I don't know. Take a wrecker and pull it out of the ground. You pull the ballots out and you take them straight to the counters. It's not that complicated. It doesn't take till 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to count a ballot. Everybody ought to know who won by midnight.
Now, the question is, you know, at what level is it cheating? Are you just cheating the presidential vote? Are you cheating other votes? Because when you look back at the 2020 election, the Democrats won the presidency, but they went from a 32-seat majority in the House to just 9. They lost House seats.
Because they're focusing on, most of the time, they're focusing on one particular thing. It's very hard to send a list of cheat codes out, and have everybody comply. Most of the time, it's one target, and that target in this instance was Donald J. Trump. Kill him at all costs. Get rid of him, whatever it takes. That was the focus of the Democrat Party, and I must say, probably 25 to 30% of Republicans didn't want him back in there, because after he won this first election, a bunch of them, mass of them, quit. I think we got 20 of them or so, leaving at the end of next year. Your bud's leaving in the next year.
Who's that?
McCarthy.
Oh, he's leaving at the end of this year. Yeah.
Nice guy.
He is. He's a great guy. You don't have to like the guy but he's a nice guy.
I don't know anything about him personally. As far as I know, he is a nice guy, but his politics suck.
Well, to you. And, what I ask, and I'll still ask it, what was different? What has been different?
What was
He got in
different?
trouble for asking for a month to get the budgets done. Now, how many months has it been? And now they're pushing it to February. Are they getting rid of Johnson? They got rid of McCarthy for 30 days. He asked for 30 days, and they got rid of him. Where is Gates and all these guys now going after Johnson, who's asking for basically 90, 120 days?
Well, I think we have to use a little, well, I won't say that. I think what we have to do is look at things as they really are. I mean, it's like, how many times are you gonna go back to the car lot and trade it in because it's a lemon before you go to another one and just says, I'm going to deal with this until next time, until this lease is up. And this is what's going on in the Republican Party, because I'm upset too with Johnson that he went over and made a deal with the Democrats. But that kind of thing is systemic in the Republican Party, that somehow or another they continue to cave on these big 3,000-page bills. And what happens is that they get bit every single time. But the direction that Johnson takes and the approach that he takes was different than McCarthy, even though you have some similarities in there. And that's all they are, is just some similarities. But his approach is completely different than McCarthy. But now that he's leaving, Johnson is there, I don't want to talk about McCarthy no more.
Well, and I like Johnson. I don't have a problem with Johnson. I think he's a good guy, and I think he should have a chance to do it. I'll tell you, when you say Republicans do this, I can tell you something Republicans never did in history. 8 Republicans never joined up with every single Democrat to get rid of a speaker. Never. No party ever did that. And that's what I think is the worst part of this whole thing.
And I think
this one person can throw the whole house into disarray.
Yeah, what you had is that you had people like Gates, Roy,
Roy did not vote for that.
And a handful of others. Yeah, but he was dead set against it. But anyways, you have a handful of Republicans that get sick of things going on as usual. And an example is this NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, that was just passed. Now this doggone thing, man, there were a handful of Republicans that voted for, not just a handful, but there were over 100 that voted for this garbage.
147.
Yeah, that voted for this garbage. Now inside of that was what was that thing where the FBI can continue to fund the FISA court and all of those things like that. That continues to where the FBI is continuing to spy on Americans if they can find some kind of offset connection to a foreigner. And they know that Americans' rights are, and they signed off on it anyway. Why? It's because them going home to eat a piece of turkey is more important than the security of the American people's rights and the security of the country. They don't care. And both Democrats and Republicans are going to have to stop sending politicians up there and send some statesmen up there that care about the country more than they do about their next election. And it's killing us.
Well, and I think that's, when I've seen that this morning, and John Fredericks was talking about that, but, there's 147 of them that voted to, support that
Exactly.
National Defense Authority Act, which included that FISA thing.
Yep.
And, they knew full well that it was being used to spy on Americans.
278,000
and-
illegal searches of Americans. from the
And,
FBI.
you know, the thing that frustrates me the most was that they never really considered where all of that money was being spent, what it was going to be used for, just like Ukraine, just like the border, just like everything they fund. They're, oh yeah, let's just pass it because we got a vacation coming up and we don't want to miss that. Until we get some folks there that are willing to start digging into some of this funding and take some responsibility for why these things are being funded, with a lot of that money coming back to the lobbyists and a lot of it coming back to congressional campaigns, this is never going to stop.
Yep.
And, you know, and funding this thing is no different. You know, it's like I heard one guy this morning said that it's a take it or leave it legislative mentality.
Yep. Every single time.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out, and I think that this speaks well of Trump even better than what the polls are saying, but I went back, and if you want to bring it up here, this is the Real Clear Politics, which takes an average of all the polls. This was the 2020 election. So what you see here is the Real Clear Politics average going into election day had Biden winning by 7.2. Okay, he only won by 4.5 at the end of the day. So that's a 2.7 margin of difference that Trump overperformed the polling. Okay, so when you look at this, Economist YouGov had Biden by 10. CNBC had Biden by 10. Quinnipiac had Biden by 11. NBC News, Wall Street Journal had Biden by 10. I mean, there were polls. Going into Election Day, Biden was supposed to win and obviously win big. He ended up winning by a lot less than what the polls were saying then. So the reason I think that's important is because Trump did better than the polls by 2.7 points. Right now, I'm going to switch over here to the 2020 for the looking ahead right now. Right now, Trump is ahead 3.2. If you throw in that he also overperforms the polls by 2.7, he's actually up by about almost 6 right now. And Biden won last time by 4.5. My big, you know, when you look at the results, and we all saw what was going on in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and these late numbers coming in, and a lot of that was because they said, you know, they had to hand count. A lot of this stuff had to be mailed in because of COVID and all that crap that was going on. You know, but at the end of the day, the polls still show that Trump did better than what the polls said was supposed to happen right here, because he was supposed to lose by 7.2 and he only lost by 4.5. So if you look at that and you know, weigh that out, and that's the poll of polls. That's all the polls. They take all the polls and put them together. And Trump is already leading in the poll of polls right now by 3.2, and if he overperforms that like he did last time by 2.7, he's up by almost 6 right now. So I tell you the biggest thing I thought had a problem with the last election, not necessarily just the results. Of course, they didn't go the way I wanted to, but it was the massive amount of additional votes that we had than any other presidential election in history. And not by a little bit. It's like 20%. And I compared like the last 5 or 6 presidential elections. Some of them were 2% more. Some of them were even a little less than the time before. But this time, total votes cast was way higher than ever in the history of elections. I'll bring that up for you. But looking at these numbers, and I know, you know, you don't trust the numbers as the election, and I think that there's legitimate reasons not to. But what do you think about that Biden did have a 7-point lead heading in, and he won by 4.5?
You know, I would have loved to see him win by that 4.5 without the shenanigans in these large metropolitan cities. That's what I'd like to see. Because no matter what those polls say, and no matter whether he won or not, you cannot ignore the shenanigans that went on. And I don't put it past some of these pollsters. And in my mind, I can't think of the name of it, but there's only 1 or 2 that I'd even trust. But when you look at all the shenanigans that were going on, in these metropolitan cities, especially in the states that Trump was predicted to win and lost. I just can't ignore that, because I know that the Republican Party and its cohorts in the media and a lot of these pollsters lean left, far left, that I can't set aside the idea that they may have been in cahoots with one another. I know that makes me a conspiracy theorist, but that's one of the cards I carry in my wallet. I suspect everything.
Trust but verify. It's always good. But you say leading in the states. He wasn't leading in Pennsylvania. He wasn't leading in Michigan. He wasn't
in
leading
Pennsylvania,
in
the night of the night of the election, in Pennsylvania, he was winning. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when things
you're
flipped
talking about
around.
the election,
Yes.
the numbers. I'm talking about the polling.
Oh no, I don't care about that.
But
That's just somebody's opinion.
it shows, I look at that, and I use my own course correction when I look at them,
Yeah.
and I use these numbers to see. But let me just write one more number down here, just to show you the difference. So in 08, the total amount of votes cast was 128 million. That was Obama over McCain.
Okay.
In 2012, Obama over Romney, it actually went down to 125 million votes cast between the two of them.
Well, I don't think anybody had any confidence in Romney. Certainly nobody had any confidence in McCain. I mean, those were two duds.
But let's follow this
hadn't
through.
been proved.
Let's follow this through. So then Trump beats Hillary, and the total votes between the two of them together, 127. So let me tell you those three numbers of 12 years worth here. 128, 125, 127.
Okay.
Biden versus Trump, 155. That's 30 million more votes in one election cycle.
That ought to tell you something.
That's
How
what
many-
I look at.
How many vans does that take?
I don't know. Let's extrapolate that.
But-
then we'll figure it to the 10th power.
But
we might
remember,
get close.
that 30 million didn't just go. Let me just share with you. Trump went from he had 62 million votes, and Hillary had 65, but he had 62 million votes. The next year, Trump had 74 million votes. He increased his vote total by 12 million votes. But Biden went from Hillary's 65 to 81. So that was 22 million
Can we
votes.
can we ask ourselves, given the performance and the history of Joseph Biden and his campaigning, or the non-existence of his campaigning, do we really believe that people got really that excited about him to cast that many votes, to break records like that for Joseph Biden? And we would have to ignore, again, all the shenanigans going around in these liberal states.
Well, and the
That
other
Joseph
thing is,
Biden won it fair and square. There were no shenanigans going on. If there was just a teeny bit. There ain't no way in God's green earth that I'd believe something like that.
well, remember this.
Because
When you
in
look
my
at these
world,
state by state, and I do that when I look at these things, in California, Biden won California by over 5 million votes. So he won the whole thing by just a little over 5 million votes. So the other 49 states were almost equal, except for California.
California's no ways equal, though.
No, and that's what I'm saying is you will have a state like California, they'll throw the final numbers way off. That's why we have an electoral college. But just remember, the numbers were even.
But if you factor in the demographic shifts that went on when Trump was running in 2020, he was pulling more of the black vote, more of the Hispanic vote, more of the Asian vote. He was even pulling more of the Jewish vote, for crying out loud. And so he's pulling all of these different demographics, which means less for the Democrats, more for the Republicans, but somehow or another our population kept growing to make up the difference for Biden.
So look
How'd that happen?
So look at Pennsylvania, which I say the new litmus test is Pennsylvania. It used to be Ohio.
The new Warsaw.
Well, but look how close it was. Even with Biden winning, it was only by less than 100,000. It was 3,458,000 to 3,337,000.
They ran out of vans.
I mean, there was only 80,000 vote difference in the entire state of almost 7 million
Yeah.
votes cast,
Yeah.
and it came down to less than 1% of that.
Yeah.
And so, do I think that
They
the
didn't
polls
wanna
are
make
off
it-
enough this next time around? If the polls are right, and they've underestimated Trump last time, I still feel very good about what this next election cycle will be. I mean,
I will
yeah, we
bet
need
you-
to be.
I will bet you your next paycheck that there's going to be some of the same shenanigans going on in these same places. I will, and I'll put up a donut.
Well, I tell you what, as we get closer to the election and I watch the polls, I'll make a prediction on the polls, based on the polls, closer to election time, and you make a prediction on the polls, and we'll put a donut on the line
Yeah, we'll do that.
on the outcome.
I'll even put up a caramel with sprinkles.
Even if we project the same winner, let's see who can get closer to that final percentage of result, and compared to how far off the poll was or how close the poll was.
Okay.
So we can have some fun with that
Yeah, we can.
and measure that out. I have my own methodology. You have a methodology.
Yeah, I do.
And we'll play it out, and we'll see how that goes.
I think it'll be fun.
But we got a lot of politics that's going to happen between now and then, and we'll keep you up to loop with that
Yeah.
right here on the show. I want to remind you that you can also get the show on Roku. Go to High Plains News and download the app. It's free, and you can watch this on your television. You can get it at Facebook Live, which a lot of you are on with us. We appreciate that. But you can also go to High Plains TV and get it on YouTube. So whatever format you prefer,
Yep.
we're out here for you to be able to watch it and however you prefer to get it.
And don't forget to share the show with your friends, even if they're out of state.
Yeah. That's a cool thing about this format is it's not limited. It's international.
It is.
This signal goes out everywhere. So be a part of it. We don't want to leave you without giving you a squeaky clean car wash weather report. Today, a chance of rain and snow, mainly before 11 a.m. Patchy, dense fog before 11 a.m., otherwise cloudy, then gradually becoming mostly sunny with a high near 44. North-northwest wind, 8 to 16 miles per hour. Chance of precipitation is 30%. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 24. Northwest wind, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Tonight's going to be Saturday is going to be sunny with a high near 52. 52 tomorrow. West-northwest wind, 10 to 13 miles per hour. Saturday night, mostly clear with a low around 23. West wind, 6 to 10 miles per hour. Sunday, sunny with a high near 57. West-northwest wind, 8 to 13 miles per hour. Sunday night clear with a low around 22. Looking ahead to next week, Monday, which will be a week before Christmas, 52. Tuesday, 58. Wednesday, 57. And Thursday, 54. That's your weather outlook. Just a little more dreary this morning, and then things will start looking better for the next 7 days. That's your weather outlook brought to you by Squeaky Clean Car Wash. We'll be back with you on Monday at 7:30 a.m. We hope you enjoy your weekend. Until then, this is Earl with the Leader in Times with Jim Rice, B. Simons, and Larry White saying when you live in Liberal,
Or Winnipeg, Canada.
there's no place like home.
No, there is not.
Have a great day.